Hi, I'm Teena Cahill, and welcome to Wisdom and Beyond. Today we have my good friend, Dr. Valerie Brooks-Klein. Hi, Valerie. How are you?
Hi, Tina.
And Valerie, you're a clinical psychologist in Hamilton, New Jersey, but
Yes.
you're also senior counselor at Mercer County Community College.
That's right.
That's a big job. What's a senior counselor
Yes,
do
it
there?
is. Well, we try to work with students regarding any kind of difficulties or pressures they might be having at school. We try to hold workshops for the students to help them function more optimally. We even try to do workshops for the faculty and staff in case they have any questions.
I mean, get ready, here come the kids.
Yes, that's pretty much it.
Right, surviving.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about the beginning of school. I mean, you're also a mother.
Yes.
You headed a child study team years
That's
ago.
right.
You have tons of experience teaching.
Yes.
You have a degree in education as well as in psychology.
Yes, that's true.
So, I mean, there's nobody better versed than you to talk about these kinds of things.
Thank you.
So, what do we do? I mean, school's about ready to open. It's really an exciting time in my house because I always like to be part of that beginning of the school year and feel that excitement. But also, there's sometimes some stressors with that.
Yes, I think there's a lot of stressors associated with it.
What's a big one?
Well, I think just having to get back into a routine.
I know, that's what I always hated when my kids were young. I loved the relaxation of summer and you didn't have to have a routine. Until about August 31st, then I thought, don't we need some structure?
But I personally have mixed feelings, and I think that reflects what a lot of other families feel, because you do want that newness of the new school year and all the potential that it might hold, but then just I think it's drudgery sometimes of having to follow through with a routine.
That's true.
The homework and it's a lot of stress.
I agree. So what's some of the things that we can do to help our kids have a good year?
Well, I think that if we can maybe even talk about this particular issue, that you will have, you will have some mixed feelings, and being prepared with the many lists that teachers send home in terms of what students need to have.
Right. So have all that ahead of time.
Have all that ahead of time. And I think as the caretakers, I think we need to be ready, whether it's mom, whether it's dad, whether it's extended family. I think we all need to be ready and prepared.
I think that's absolutely true. So it's time not for us to get the kids organized, but to get ourselves organized.
Yeah, because, I think we set the tone.
Yeah.
And if
mom's
we're
not
frazzled,
happy, nobody's happy.
that is so true. And if we're so frazzled and we don't know where everything is and what we need, we're not modeling good behavior for our kids, because kids learn more by what we do, not as much by what we say.
It's true.
So that by having that attitude that, we can handle this, we've got everything set, prepared.
So maybe get together a few weeks before and try to map out what it is we have to get done so that we can have a good start.
That would be great. That would be great.
Of course, we can go overboard about this. I was a single parent with 3 kids, and I was going to graduate school, and I was teaching college, and all these kinds of things. And there was this one year when I decided I would get ahead of the ball game, and I would make all these peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and freeze them and stick them in the freezer, and then I would be halfway done with all these lunches. So I did it. About 3 or 4 days later, the kids came and said, "Stop sending the things; are horrible. That's awful."
Yeah.
So I always felt a little guilty that I sort of went a little overboard.
Just a little. But it was a great effort.
It was a great effort.
Great effort. Yeah.
So what can a mom do to sort of help herself get ready besides getting organized? Or what if you don't want your kids to go back to school? What if you want them to stay home?
Oh, well,
it's a whole new set of problems.
There are a few people who feel that way. Yes. It's tough because I think, and I tend to feel this way as well, that, things are just so relaxed over the summer. And, you can just kind of take things as it comes. But then with the new school year, all that's out the window.
Yeah.
And I almost think that summers are too long, because when do you have this opportunity to have, almost 12 weeks off?
Right.
And it's not a good way to
get out
start
of your
disciplining
routine.
kids for the real world.
Right. That's a good point.
It's so true.
Well, some schools are going year-round, I've read.
Well,
but I
think it would be helpful.
I also read, though, that on the studies that they've done with those schools, that the test scores don't go up particularly. But, there's lots of things to measure other than just that.
Right.
So,
I don't think it's just the test scores. I think it's just the whole acculturation to is expected of you for
is
life.
like.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's talk about kids of different ages. I mean,
Okay.
if I've got a kid, well, let's start at the top.
Yeah.
If I've got a kid going off to a
College.
college, and they're coming to you, and
Yes.
you're getting those
Yeah.
faculty members ready, what should I be doing as a parent? What would be helpful for me besides getting my own act together, not falling apart and sobbing hysterically in the parking lot when I drop them off?
That's good,
Which I
Teena.
have been known to do. But then I realize they all come back, so it's okay. They're not really gone forever. It just seems like they're going to be gone forever.
Yeah.
But what can I do to sort of help bridge that transition from maybe being a high school senior to
Yeah.
being a college student?
Yeah. Well, this is tough, and I think with the advent of technology and cell phones, I think it's harder and harder to create that separation between yourself and your kids. And I think they need to have a little bit more opportunity to do some of their own problem solving.
So I should not ask them to call me every minute of every day.
I think that might be slightly
Do you know
disruptive.
how I learned that? It's very interesting. When my youngest son went to graduate school, and maybe
Yeah.
this was because he was my youngest child, he was my youngest child, I was kind of worried about, is everything okay?
Yeah.
Did you get it? I was excessively worried about it. I don't know why. Maybe just because he was the baby. You know, if you're the youngest child, you're the baby when you're 65.
That's
you know,
true.
so whatever. So I kept calling him up every day and saying, "How's it going?" and being very cheerful. And finally one day he said, "Mom, would you stop calling me? Because when you call me every day, you make me think you think I can't do it." I never thought he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to all happen really well. And boy, was that a big lesson. So I stopped calling, and he succeeded wonderfully. And
Yes.
he certainly didn't need me calling every day.
Yeah, yeah. But this is quite a developmental task for kids. And,
Sure.
I think parents need to encourage them to utilize some of their own problem-solving skills and not just expect, mom and dad to be able to.
And that's how we
Point the
build
way.
self-esteem, by
That's
solving
right.
some things.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think
So give
that
them space.
I think you need to give them space and pass on that message that, you know what, I know you can do this, and that expectation, I
Well,
think
when
is
I was sobbing
important.
hysterically in the parking lot, I never thought they couldn't do it. I just knew it was a transition.
Yeah,
I was sort of mourning the change.
yeah, it's a loss.
But then
It
I
feels
got my
like a
act
loss.
together and went shopping. Because it was right by a mall.
Whatever works.
Whatever works,
Good mood changer.
Yeah, exactly. Good mood changer. Forget music.
Nah,
Go
nah, nah,
shopping.
nah. Right. Good for the economy.
Yeah, so I
yeah.
think it's okay to sort of not grieve, celebrate, but also feel sad that the children that's what we want our children to do, grow up and
Right.
leave us. That's
Right.
the job.
Well, and I think that's a good point, that people don't realize that it is going to feel like a sense of loss. And, don't feel that that's such an unusual feeling.
Exactly.
A lot of us will feel that
And
way.
they come back.
Yes.
And then also in our situation where we're in an extended family house, we go move in with them. So there you
That's
go,
terrific.
And you never
That's
get
terrific,
they can never
yeah.
get rid of us
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Well, so how about for high school? Now we have a young woman in our family
Oh,
getting ready to
yeah.
go to high school. She's so excited. She's very anxious to try out for
Yeah, that's
the
great.
teams, and I've been thanking Teddy Kennedy, who we know has passed away recently.
Yeah.
Very much for his determination to get Title IX through, as I see this young girl
phenomenal.
trying to see if she can make one of the teams, What would you say about a kid entering high school?
Well, this does require a high level of preparation, and I think that parents need to recognize that there are a lot of very, very real stressors, not only academically but also socially.
Tell me three.
Okay, 3 are that kids are not nice,
Yeah.
okay?
Yep.
And
It's tough out there. It's the
it's
jungle.
very, very tough out
It's the
there.
jungle.
Yes.
It can be the jungle. We don't
Yes.
want it to be the jungle.
And this doesn't apply only to face-to-face interactions, but also internet technology, cell phones,
Saying mean things, texting mean things.
yeah, rumors.
Rumors.
He
yeah.
said, she said kind of
Yeah.
things, as
Yeah.
they refer to it as. So there's a lot of that going on. And for teens, it feels like the end of the world.
When somebody is
When they have any of those kind of
Yeah.
negative interactions. And I think that we as adults, whether we're parents, caretakers, staff, where we might say, oh, don't worry, it'll just blow over. You need to realize that from their perspective, it's almost a life-ending situation.
And why is that?
I think it has a lot to do with their developmental
Yeah.
capabilities. It's, cognitively their frontal lobes are not matured enough to be able to.
So we now know that this part of our
Yeah.
brain up here,
Yeah.
which helps us make good decisions
Mm-hmm.
and control our impulses and things like that, isn't really fully developed
No,
till we're
it's
like
not.
25, right?
Yes.
So we've got
Mhm.
kids making poor decisions that might be teasing other kids.
Yes.
But then we're not we haven't really matured to the level that
Right.
when we're being teased that we understand the big picture.
Right, and the regulation of emotions
Yes,
is another part of the frontal
exactly.
lobe function.
Right.
So they just
That's right.
react very,
That's right.
very intensely.
That's right.
And it's hard for them to mediate that.
Right. And so our job is to try to help them do that.
Yes, and this is where I think this is so critically important, and I think that we're falling short of this in our educational system. One of the most effective ways to help people raise that cognitive level of functioning is by this type of discourse. You need to have conversations about what's going on, what your thought processes are like, and it's so helpful if you can talk to someone
Yes.
who's a couple levels above you.
Yeah.
And without that verbal discourse or that interchange, it's almost impossible to raise your level of thinking.
So you're talking about talking to our children about what are their choices in terms of reacting if something like this goes on.
and maybe even understanding things from someone else's perspective, because this is another cognitive shortcoming where being able to understand someone else's point of view, that's quite a challenge because they're
to
so
realize that
self-centered.
All right, just because you see things some way, it doesn't mean that somebody else can't, it might not, that it's not reasonable for
Right.
someone else to see it in another way.
Right,
Yes.
and just being able to understand how, like maybe that young girl sitting over there all by herself,
Yes.
she's got to be feeling very lonely.
Right.
You don't make fun of her because
Right.
can you imagine how that must make her
Feel.
feel?
That's right.
And there's not a lot of that empathy taking going on.
Well, that needs to be, I agree with you.
Oh,
that I agree with you.
Yeah.
I love it when I see the kids in our family reach out to other
Yes,
kids.
yes.
We just had an interesting experience. I took a young member of our family, a young girl, on a vacation trip, and she was actually in a camp during the day, and it was at an institute where I was speaking. And a lot of kids stay in that camp all summer, and she was just going to be there for a week. And so I said, look, now you're getting a little older. There are going to be some boys around. You're the new girl on the block. Just be careful. Just know that, you've got to think about how you're going to respond to things and know who you are. So I think that that my radio show is downloaded onto iTunes. So she goes off to a dance, and sure enough, one of the boys comes up to her, and he was a little pushy, and he was trying to tell her how cool he was, and he said, apparently he does some kind of music, and he said, and I'm on iTunes. And she turned to him, this is why being prepared helps. She said, my grandma's on iTunes, right? But that's an example of having these dialogues ahead of time and giving the kids not that language, because I never knew she would say that, but just getting them to think about,
thinking
wait
ahead.
a minute, what's this person about who's talking to me?
Yes.
Has he really got my best interest at heart, or is there something else going on here?
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
that's so critical. And when you have an educational system where you have sometimes 30 people in a class, it becomes very difficult for teachers to have
To do it all.
that
I don't
kind
think
of
they
one-on-one discussion. And with both parents working and kids, they just want to be locked up in their room.
Right.
It's very difficult to get to those dialogues.
What I think sometimes, you tell me, because you may have a different response to this, but when you look at Sternberg's work at Tufts on conflict resolution and things like that, one of the things that I think adults as well as kids don't often think about is when somebody says something nasty to you or whatever, choose not to respond.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the great ways to end the conflict is just don't respond. And I think that's so hard for kids to do. I think they have to respond. And I think as soon as you respond, you sort of react to the bully or whoever it is, and you kind of give away your power.
Right.
And you give them sort of, I mean, what do you
Well,
think about that? Is that
it's
a good
difficult.
idea or not?
It's difficult. I don't think we can have just one
No, we can't.
broad generalized reaction.
But that's one possibility.
It is one option.
What's another one that you might use?
Well, I often will encourage people that if it's bordering on harassment, and it very often can, that you really do need to seek out some trusted adult.
And that's one of the things Sternberg
Yeah.
talks about too, bringing in a mediator, bringing in a third party to
Yeah.
try to stabilize it. And knowing that you can do that, that you're not doing anything wrong when you reach out for help from an adult.
Right. It conflicts with what a lot of kids feel
know.
in their culture, because then they're considered,
Right.
somewhat of a, what would they call them?
Well-
Stoolie. They don't call them stoolies
Well, when I
anymore.
was a
What's
kid,
good
it was
word?
sort of like a rat fink.
Yeah.
But I
yeah.
don't know what that
yeah.
means anymore. I don't know
Right.
why that
you know,
means.
because a lot of times the problem will just compound itself.
Yeah.
And as soon as the adults turn their backs, then it comes at them even worse.
Right.
So
That's tough.
it's a very tough situation to navigate.
It's tough. What's another thing that we can do to help our high school kids go off to school? What else besides sort of having these preemptive conversations, which I
Yep.
think is a great idea?
Yeah, I think they need to be prepared in understanding how they navigate their academic world in terms of what their stressors are, how they handle stressors, what are some of the things that have happened in the past with them that have created some problems, and anticipating maybe a different
So knowing
response
themselves,
to
knowing
them.
it's not just
Yeah.
about did I get the best teacher, not
Right.
the best teacher is
Right.
what do I do when I'm in a classroom and how can I do that in a
Right.
way that can make me more successful?
Yeah, like after so many years of having difficulty keeping track of assignments, maybe it's time to start thinking about a new way of doing that.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it's so hard sometimes to convince kids and even adults
Right.
that you either need to write it down
Right.
or use an electronic
Right.
device,
Right.
but you can't just trust it to your own
That's
memory.
absolutely true. That's the first step in getting organized is
It
make a
really
list.
is.
And I think you know this because we know each other pretty well, but I'm so compulsive about that you've seen me write on my hand.
Yes, I have.
When I'm afraid I'm going to lose the paper, I write it on. Well, now I have grandchildren that write on their hands, and my daughter goes, "Mom."
If it
Be
works,
some settings
if it
that wouldn't be
works.
okay, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, now how about a middle schooler? That's a tough
That's
nut
a
to
tough
crack,
year.
right?
Tough
What
time
would you
period.
say about that?
You know, I think their main focus is on survival.
Survival. I knew you were going to say that. I
really
agree,
is.
actually.
It's
Just make
tough.
it
Yes,
through the
yes,
first week.
Yes,
That's
yes.
a great expectation.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
a great.
it is.
Yeah,
It
just
is.
make it through the first few days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they really have no idea what they're going to be confronted with. Their biggest concern is, who am I going to sit with at lunch?
Yes.
Will I know anybody in any of my classes?
Do I
am
look like everybody else?
big one. Am I going to be able to change all of my classes and deal with all of these teachers that I'm going to have? Because that's really a new
Can I
experience.
possibly do the work they're going to expect of me?
That's all of these are
Where am
very
I?
big.
This is a big place.
Yes, yes.
I've never been in a place like this before.
Yeah.
I've got all these teachers when maybe I've always had two, maybe
Right,
at the most,
that's
or three,
right.
or whatever.
So they're basically fighting down terror most of the day, and if they can get through the day without being completely humiliated, it's probably a good day for them.
And I believe that deodorant goes a long way.
Very,
And not
very.
being humiliated in middle
Yes,
school.
yes,
I think
yes.
that's really
Very
kind of
much so.
That's always a good conversation to have before they start,
Absolutely. No,
right?
that's so true.
But I
Hygiene.
think that's great. The expectation is you come home breathing every day, and we're going to call it a
This is good.
success. I think that's a good expectation. And then the second week,
Yeah.
you can look at other things
Right.
like, do you know what your assignments are? I guess
Yeah,
you need
yeah.
to know that, but
Yeah.
I think that's an appropriate expectation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think schools are doing a little bit better job in terms of orienting the kids to their newer environments.
I
but,
think so too.
and they do have a lot of the teams, the teaching teams,
Yes.
which does help.
And they have the kids in, so they take them to the school on tours.
Yeah, but and something that I like to remind staff and teachers, administrators, kids have a very, very difficult time asking for help.
Yes, okay.
And they tend to look at it as, that's just an age-appropriate expectation that they should be able to ask for help. But kids are so overwhelmed with the social situation, with being singled out, that to single themselves out to ask for help is way beyond most kids' capability.
That's an important thing. I hadn't even ever thought about
Yes,
that. Is there
yeah.
anything we can do to help our kids ask for help?
Well, I try to set up situations with the teachers.
So they
because
open
this
the
is,
door for it to
yeah,
happen.
Yeah, because they need to realize how difficult this is for
So
kids.
as a teacher, what could I do to make that more likely than a child would?
Well, maybe set aside where kids can come and talk to you
Okay.
outside of the class or at the end of the class so that they don't have to, they feel, humiliate themselves in front of a whole classroom full
So
of
don't
kids.
wait for them to come to me. On some level, I go to them and just say something like, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Anything
That would
I
be
can help
wonderful
you
if you
with, or
could.
something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Sort of an open-ended question, something
Right.
they can't answer yes or
Yeah.
no to.
Or I didn't see you working on that worksheet today. And why don't you come by after class and I'll see if I can answer any questions for
Okay.
you. Just to reach out to them because it's so hard for kids to do that.
Yeah, I guess so. I hadn't really thought
yeah,
about
it
that.
really, really is.
Yeah, I can. Or I think it's hard for adults too sometimes.
Sure.
You know?
Oh, absolutely.
So now, what about elementary school? What, say, my child's going off to kindergarten. I remember the first day my children each went off to kindergarten, and I made clothes for my daughter, and it was so. I look back, and I was like, oh, poor girl going off to school in a dress that has the ABCs all over it, But I thought it was so nice. But it's such an exciting time. I have a granddaughter that just started kindergarten 3 or 4 days ago, and I called her up the night before, and I said to her what I always said to my children when I sent them off to school: laugh, talk, and have a good time. And she's a pretty outgoing girl, and my son said, "That was great, Mom," because she clammed up. She the day before school, she clammed up. She got really nervous about starting, and then she loved it. And then he said by the third day she had a total meltdown because she realized, this is for keeps. I don't just go one day. I'm going there every day
Yeah,
now,
this is an everyday thing.
Yeah. So what do you
Wow.
think we could do to help the kids that are starting the early grades?
Yeah, well, again, I think this is where it's pretty important for us to help them get organized and for us to allow them to borrow our calm. And hopefully we are in a calm place. Borrow our calm. And just have things prepared, help them to understand what to expect.
And make it joyful.
Make it joyful as much as possible.
Have a celebration maybe when they come home.
I think that's great.
Not
I
a
think
big
it's great.
celebration, but just something.
Yeah, that this is a
fun.
big deal.
It's a big
It's
deal.
a happy time.
Yeah.
And
That you're supposed to grow up.
Right.
You're supposed to grow up and have these transitions.
Yeah. And also to realize that a lot of times when kids are going through these transition periods, whether it's elementary school, middle school, high school, that you may see some regressive type of behaviors.
Right. So if they were acting very appropriately and following all the rules before, now they might not, and that's the sign of some stress.
It's a sign of some stress, and it's a way of them communicating. I'm not too sure about what's going on here. I might need a little bit more of your help and your support. And if you can hear that message, I think you'll be able to respond to those needs a lot better.
Right, and that's really, as a parent, we have to have a fair amount of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Where we can read between the lines. We can
Yes.
hear the words that aren't said. We don't know what's going on, but we can sort of sense a change in behavior.
Yes.
That's really
Yes.
how we try to
Right.
figure
And
out
that's
if
how
a kid's
kids
under
communicate.
stress.
They really communicate through behavior,
change in
not as
behavior.
much of, Mom, I'm feeling a little stressed
Right,
now.
I
I'm
don't think
starting
it's gonna
kindergarten.
happen.
That's not going to happen.
Right. Well, there's some adults that don't do that either.
Well,
actually.
that's right.
Actually,
They
it was
never
great.
learned it.
My husband used to be a fighter pilot, and
Yep.
he just wrote a story that's been published in a book called Supersonic Cowboys. It's all these guys' stories of flying this airplane. It was very cute because he had a very difficult situation. And then in one line he said, and then he got it all fixed. He said, and I had a pleasant ride back to the base. And then he says, except for the anxiety. Now, I've never heard him use that word, but he could put it in writing, right?
That's
So
good, yeah.
It's very
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
And I don't
yeah.
think he would use that kind of terminology. So it's not just kids that sometimes. So now what if I've got a 3 or 4-year-old that I'm taking off to preschool, and I'm ready to leave, and he or she is grabbing my leg, sobbing hysterically, falling on the ground, and I don't know, what do I do? Because it's a pretty big deal being left for the first time at preschool.
Yes.
Like, will Mommy
it
and Daddy
is.
ever come back?
It is. I mean, and hopefully it's not the only time they've ever been separated from their parents.
Hopefully not, but
You know,
it might be.
Well, it's true, and I do
grandparents
try
or-
to
yeah.
I do try to work with families to help them to
Get a babysitter.
foster, yes,
Yep.
because they do need to focus
They
on
do.
being a couple,
Yep.
and
Date
maybe
night.
even being, you know, having some individual time.
I encourage all my kids to have a date night every week.
I think that's so critically important.
It is.
I tell my families that the best thing that you can do for your kids is to have a good relationship
agree.
yourselves. Yeah.
And I insist that we have date night once a week. my
That's
husband and
I think that's
it's
great.
important. There's no question.
It is.
But let's say that, you know, what would you say about a 3 or 4 year old? I mean, what can I do to sort of help that besides the
Yeah,
fact
we want to normalize this.
Yeah.
You know, and again, we want our calm to be transmitted, and just reassure them and bring them into the school, and hopefully, again, it wouldn't be the first time that they met their teacher, because usually they are
Right.
prepared better than that. And the teacher will probably just have the child come in and just ask you to walk away, and you need to do that.
Right.
And probably within the next few minutes, your child will be distracted and happy. And but if he sees you getting upset,
Yes.
they'll pick up that cue, and it'll
Absolutely.
just keep it going longer
So if
and
you're
longer.
horribly upset, don't throw up till you get out in the bushes.
Try to wait. Yes. Try to
But
wait.
then find something for your. Well, I mean, I think most husbands and wives in this world today go off to work.
Yeah.
And they switch roles. But
That's right.
find a way to take care of yourself.
That's right.
Whatever it is you're going
Right.
to do, so
Right.
that you believe you've chosen well the school, and trust the teachers and your
Yes.
child.
Right.
And remember that our children are, again, supposed to mature.
Yes.
Supposed to
Yeah.
grow up.
Right.
Supposed to leave us.
And that's a good point, because we can't have them in a situation where everything is just so easy
I
and
agree.
that they never have any
I
kind
agree.
of frustration or
I agree.
unhappiness.
I agree.
Because if they don't experience it, they never
right.
cultivate the skills of
Right.
self-soothing or
right.
working on their own independence.
Or the self-esteem of knowing they can solve problems.
That's right.
You know my line, I'm a big fan of opportunity and no fan of privilege.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
I
So
think
true.
kids need to be out there and they need protection and they need all of that, but they need to know that they can solve problems.
Yes.
They need to know they can work.
That's
They-
right.
You know, I mean, it's
It's
important.
true.
Work is
It's true.
important. And they need to know that they have value, that they can make a difference for somebody, that they can volunteer, that there's somebody depending upon them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. And that goes, my little grandson, you know, my husband's disabled, and in the house he uses a walker, and my little grandson, who will be 4 in November, grabs a hold of the front of Grandpa's walker and pulls it a little because he thinks he's helping him. It's not so great for Grandpa because it's actually not helping, but Grandpa understands the bigger issue.
Yeah.
And so he lets him do it for a while because
Yeah.
it's important to think you've helped Grandpa.
That's
We can
right.
then move it so that maybe he helps him in a better way, which he does all the time. He brings
Yeah.
him the paper and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's self-esteem building
It
to know
is.
that you're doing those
It
kinds
is.
of things.
And I don't think you'd be surprised at this, but a lot of parents do feel that if their kids are feeling any kind of unhappiness or frustration, they think it's their job to make them happy. And I just, no.
No.
Let's not do
Teach
that.
them the skills
That's right.
to take care
deal
of
with
themselves.
it. Yes.
I totally agree
Yeah.
with you.
It's important.
And maybe another time down the road, we
Mm-hmm.
should just do a show about what a bag of tools that
Yeah.
parents could use
Mm-hmm.
to help their kids, you know, cognitive reframes, all kinds of different
Yeah.
things that they can do to learn how to take care of themselves. Would you be willing
Yes.
to do that?
Absolutely.
I think that
it's
would
very
be
important.
a great show because I think we need tools
Yeah.
as parents
Right.
so that we don't feel as if that we've got the right idea, but we don't know how to make it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if we as parents can learn how to keep ourselves calm
Yes.
and get a good handle on our emotions,
How do you keep yourself calm?
breathing,
Breathing, paying attention to
talking
your breathing.
to myself, reassuring myself, anticipating what might happen
Planning
so that I can
ahead.
change my
That's right,
expectations.
visualizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Music, I bet. That's
Music
a great
helps.
mood shifter.
Exercise for me, yeah.
Yeah, for me too. There's nothing better than getting out there and whacking a tennis ball to feel centered.
Right,
I agree.
and we don't want to rely too much on substances and
That's right.
you
well,
know, negative coping
if we do
mechanisms.
it right, there's a lot in our brain that is
right.
set up for us to take care of ourselves in tough times, and there's another show right there.
Really?
But we're going to have to go right now. Thank you so much
Oh,
as we
you're
start
so welcome.
school again here in Princeton and all of central New Jersey. I want
Yes.
everybody to have a wonderful year. I want us all to take care of ourselves and know that nothing's perfect. And thank you, Dr. Valerie Brooks-Klein, for helping us out with this.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining us today. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.